So we've seen altcoins struggling again, but what does that mean? Is it a buying opportunity or is it a run for the hills moment? Should you be as far away as possible from altcoins right now? I'm going to discuss that in this video. Before we even start, one thing I want to say is I focus on TA. And I think that once momentum wanes or interest wanes in a market, the news kind of follows it along the way. So there's a lot going on at the moment, but there's always been a lot going on as well. So just be very, very careful with that. Don't just wait for what you think is good news and then market will suddenly go up, and then bad news and it will go down. Doesn't work like that. We work in cycles, and that's been proven with crypto, and it's no different now. Now, when you're looking at some of these altcoins, what we're looking at is the recent move from the lows on April, and all we're trying to determine is whether this was a sustainable low and whether we'll get a higher time frame, HTF, higher low here in place. And that's what we're waiting to see. Now the move is looking quite impulsive, and on some of these altcoins, the worry is it's getting so low now that we're gonna challenge the April lows. So very likely this was all a corrective move, and we're gonna go even lower again on some of these altcoins. Now where it's not clear is some of the stronger coins, like I've discussed on previous altcoin videos, like SUI. So for example, for this one, if we're saying this is an impulsive move up, we need to bounce, and we need to kind of bounce very, very soon, because we're already past now that 618 level. This is the part where we should get a very, very strong bounce. Even if it was just corrective, we would have got a bounce at 0.5, and it's getting very, very deep now. And also what's not nice to see is on the moves down, it's looking very impulsive on the move down. You want to see it more overlappy. So as a really good example, go back to SUI back in August, and you see a 5-wave impulsive move up, but then the correction was more flat sideways like that. It wasn't very impulsive and sharp. When you see sharp corrections, that's a sign that actually the prevailing trend is still the direction of the sharp candles, which is down. So more so what's happening here could be followed through from this initial move, and we're following that through now. That's seemingly the more likely scenario as we move lower with the majority of these altcoins. And remember, I've said in previous videos before, a lot of these are dead anyway. Like things like Sandbox and stuff, completely dead. There's no surprise that the price is already at the April lows again, because it barely got any kind of bounce. And none of these bounces for 99% of the altcoins was impulsive anyway. Now, the other thing that people don't look at, so sometimes I listen to other influencers, and they make videos about altcoins, and they discuss random obscure data points that prove that, you know, an alt season is imminent and it's coming, and you have to be patient and just keep waiting. And this is crazy in my opinion. Like, it actually makes no sense whatsoever. And let me show you why. I use TA where there is obvious correlation. Like, you can actually see on the chart where this has been proven to be true. For example, I use Google Trends. It's such a basic, simple thing. It doesn't rely on any kind of price points as such. It's more interest in a topic. And when you type in altcoins, you can see here in the previous cycle, 2 peaks, one around May 2021, one around November 2021. That was the second one, which was a little bit lower in that particular case. We had twin peaks there. And now if you go back on any of these charts, for example, let's go back on Ethereum, and we're on a 2-day chart, and you can see the peaks there very, very clearly. May, November. 2 peaks correlate with the interest there is in crypto at the moment. Notice another thing. More recently, we had the peaks again. We had one back in March 2024 where we saw a lot of the altcoins peak, and then one much more recently. So if you go back to previous 90 days, you can see in this particular cycle, where are the altcoins in terms of peaks? But what you can do now is go back 12 months and just see where were the recent peaks. And you can see there was one in December, early December. And that's where actually a lot of altcoins peaked as well. And what you saw with a lot of these coins, for example, FET, is you got the initial peak there, which was March 2024, April 2024, and then we had another one in end of November, early December. That coincides very nicely. And at the moment, there's not that much interest. You could do the same thing with meme coins. Like, you just type in meme coins here, click search, and then you can see in the last 12 months, where was the peak? Exactly January 19th. And if you go on to Solana here, what you'll see is, where did we peak? Exactly January 19th. That was peak interest. Is there any interest in meme coins at the moment? Very, very little. Like, it's mainly just trench trading, low market cap, or very, very, very few select meme coins, like literally 2 or 3 out of the millions that there are available to trade. And this kind of analysis is very, very helpful because it gives me an idea of sentiment, of interest. Like how much is there really, how many people are really trading altcoins or interested? How much retail exposure is there? Zero. Absolutely zero. Nobody cares about altcoins. And all the while, Bitcoin is now doing, it actually broke all-time highs again. So this could be a little bit of the double peak that we're seeing, the December double peak and now one in June. This could be it. This could be the very, very final stages of this particular market. And things like FET, which I've discussed before, so let's just go on to FET, I think have already topped, like I keep saying. And what we might be trading here, like if you're a trader, what you want to trade is a correction. So what we're hoping for is a bounce and then maybe a quick multiple, maybe a quick 2x, 3x, and then we call it a day and that's the end of the cycle. Now, this bounce that's already happened, that could actually be it. But really, we're just trading what we call bear market rallies, in my opinion. I don't see where the altcoin interest is coming. Now, you could argue that we're just basing at the moment and we're just bottoming and it's going to suddenly pick up. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing any data that points to there being a breakout in interest with altcoins. And even in this December run where we had some, quite crazy interest compared to the months prior in altcoins, nothing really moved that much in November or December in the vast majority of altcoins. Like the ones that you know of and everybody knows about, like Ethereum, never really did anything. All it really did was hit a very clear double top that you can see here. And this double top was still way below all-time highs. Now, there's talks of it going to 10,000 and stuff like that. And again, who knows for 100% sure? But nothing in the data, nothing on the charts can back that up. And you can go back to previous cycles like influencers do and be like, well, Bitcoin first moves, then it's the altcoins, then it's the little crappy coins like, in this cycle it's meme coins or it might have been NFTs. Yes, we can talk about that. But what if this time that actually happened already? So Bitcoin was moving first and then all the way in March 2024, you got things like Injective and FET and a lot of the AI altcoins go and hit their peaks. That's happened already in this cycle. That's happened already. And then we had, what did we have after? The memes run. And then you had GOAT. Remember back in October 2024, you had Fartcoin. You had even things like Dogecoin moving a little bit and stuff like that, but nowhere near previous all-time highs because it's an older coin. So it's the newer stuff that does better this time, as I've repeated on many, many, many of my videos. So you've had the memes run. You finally had the Solana memes and the AI ones run in January. So the AI meme coins, virtuals, platforms, stuff like that. So haven't we had the rotation already? Consider that because at the end of the day, you have to think about where is the wider stock market because we're very strongly correlated. And if you look at things like NASDAQ, you do begin to wonder when you have a look at this chart and you have a look at the momentum here, you do begin to wonder if we're kind of on our last legs. So that's the NASDAQ. And then you've got the S&P 500 as well. So are we doing this final move where we could just maybe tag all-time highs and that's it? I don't know. Or it could be fresh liquidity coming into the market. I don't know. The only thing I'm querying is this. Cycle's done. Like I've been saying for a while, I think things like Solana and stuff topped. But are we bottoming out and preparing another cycle? So the next 4-year cycle, and we're starting maybe a little bit earlier, and now's a good time to kind of get those good prices. Or do we have to wait like last time, exactly 1 year from the highs? So if a lot of the late altcoin highs were November 2024, January 2025, we have to wait until the end of this year. So December 2025, January 2026, that's when we get these bottom prices. So for example, Solana, that might be somewhere, it might mess about here, do corrective stuff, but eventually it'll go back down to 80 or something like that. So much higher than its previous lows we saw here in the last market. So in December 2022, it got all the way down to $8, $9. Maybe it's doing that same thing again and then running. But next cycle is going to have a very weak cycle like Ethereum. So its all-time high is in. Its forever high is probably in my opinion. And what we're looking for this time though is Solana will do some recovery, but it's the newer stuff that was better this cycle that could bottom towards the end of the year. And generally looking at newer coins has helped this time. So I've talked about Kaito, for example. Hype is another one I've talked about. It's a newer coin of this cycle, and it did very, very well. And I was broken all-time highs. And, has it topped? Hasn't it topped? You have to look at momentum indicators, look at the trend, look at the overall market. Many things you need to consider. And, even then, risk-reward, it's probably worth it if things turn around to do a risk-reward trade on something like Hype, because it's a much stronger coin. It's stronger than 99% of the other altcoins, obviously. And Kaito is the other one I've talked about, and it's all about the pullback. So it's all about, if this is one, let's say, impulsive move up, it needs to hold. It's bouncing here around 618. It needs to hold here. It needs to turn around imminently. And what you can do in the meantime is nothing. You can be in USDT, USDC, and just wait. You don't need to be holding crypto. Now, you can hold crypto, have your risk reward, but I've seen altcoins in these types of situations dump another 20-25% like it's absolutely nothing, even when Bitcoin only goes down 1%, because they're so weak right now. And the selling pressure and the amount of people shorting altcoins and major meme coins is massive, massive. So these could easily dump more. So I personally would wait to see confirmation and a higher low and a turnaround. That's how I would trade it. But we're just playing with probabilities. At the end of the day, you have to gauge the overall sentiment, and it's not great in cryptocurrency. You can see that on so many different indicators. Like even influencer videos, including my own, views down massively, completely follows the 4-year cycle. It's textbook, literally textbook. And the views right now are off a bear market. Now you could say quality of my videos is way worse than it was a few months ago. Unlikely. Like they're probably not that much worse than they were. But again, this is just another analytics tool that you can use to gauge where we are in the market cycle. There just isn't that pump and interest. But again, I wonder when things get very, very bearish, that's sometimes a good time to accumulate. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're there where we've seen absolute capitulation and stuff like that. Nowhere near there. I mean, Bitcoin's still messing around all-time highs. We're obviously not there. But I know for sure I don't want to hold, because I know most people, unfortunately, are holding a lot of bag holding altcoins. And you guys might be holding 70, 80% down already. And you're thinking, well, if I'm 80% down, I may as well hold from here. Fair enough. But this stuff can easily drop 50% more. So if you bought today, it could easily go down 50% more over the coming weeks and months. I'm not saying that's a definite prediction and stuff like that. I'm hoping we turn and we get a bounce so we can do a little bit of a trade. So what I'm basically hoping is, before we completely dump, this is what I'm hoping will happen. I'm hoping on this recent move up from April. So let's get back to an 8-hourly. So this recent move, I'm hoping we can continue that. So these are lower time frame higher lows. This one, lower time frame. And now we want a higher time frame higher low. A higher time frame higher low. And if you can get that, you get a decent trade here. Nothing major. On Sol, you might get a bit of a 2x. On the other coins, you might get a little bit better. And then I think we'll truly dump. That's what I'm hoping. But if that doesn't happen, the dump's already begun. And we're just going to slowly bleed. That happens very commonly with altcoins in these types of market conditions. Slow extraction and bleed. And eventually bottom when nobody cares about crypto anymore. And that's usually the bottom for another cycle. And there's no reason to really believe anything's massively different. Don't worry too much about M2 supply and money supply and stuff like that. Crypto follows its own very, very clear cycle. We've had very clear March and more recent highs in a lot of the coins. And we did have an alt season. So these idiots who say, we're waiting for alt season, it'll come soon, don't know why it's not here yet. This is just retarded. Obviously, we had an alt season. So for example, this is Injective, just a random crappy coin, layer 1 that did a little bit of something. This, look, back in October 2023 when it was at $6 and then it ran to nearly $60. It did its 10x move, and that was in the space of a few months. It's had an alt season. That's happened. But this is where you need to accumulate at the beginning of future cycles. And I don't know if this is the early signs of the next cycle. I don't know that. And we won't know for sure until we see some higher time frame, higher lows. That's when we'll know for sure. All I know is the sentiment is pretty bear marketish. That's obvious. And the other challenging question is for a next cycle, because we have to talk about that now. That's where we're heading towards. What coins do you pick? That's going to be a very, very difficult question. But you are seeing some winners already, and you have to not ignore things like Hype and Kaito of recent. And also coins that have been a bit stronger towards the latter stages of this cycle, like SUI, Solana, they're probably going to perform better. Everything else, all the other 99% of altcoins, considered dead in my opinion. I don't think they're going to do anything in the next cycle. And I think most people need a dose of reality, to be honest. So in summary, don't overinvest, don't over leverage. Consider sidelines until we get some clarity, especially if you're not an active daily trader. But be on the lookout for potential gems for the next couple of years that you might be able to get very, very early. Thanks for listening.